Our word today is going to be seed, because that will pass the censors.
Orc
seed is going to be, there's going to be gallons of it in this episode.
Fantastic. I'm excited.
When we started, this was the book that we were like, can't wait to get to.
Oh, 100%. I will say Morning Glory Milking Farm was the book that made me go, I want to do a podcast. But this book has my heart.
Oh yeah, Orc Mountain as a whole. I was
This
like, more
series
people
has my
need to
heart.
know about this.
More people need to know about this.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm Megan.
And I'm Emi.
And this is Smut in Public.
Smut in Public.
I love you. This is a musical podcast where we write musicals about horny books. And then sing about them.
If only I had
unrehearsed.
If only I had that kind of musical talent, I would do it. I would do it.
Same. I would have a very different career if I had such talent. We are going to be talking about a really fantastic orc book today. But before we get into it, I went to the most incredible party that you hosted the other weekend.
Yeah.
And so you host, for context for our listeners, you host tea parties.
I do.
I would say like monthly.
Every 2 months.
Every 2 months. Thank God it's only every 2 months because of the amount of work
I said I could only handle it every 2 months.
I think that's reasonable. I travel a lot, so I'm not always able to go, but I was able to make it to this one. And it was Victorian garden party.
It was,
theme.
Victorian. It was Victorian greenhouse was the theme this time.
I was so blown away and frankly embarrassed that I didn't have a costume because you were fashion design
Everyone
major,
showed up like to the teas this time,
including yourself and your partner Jess. Looked so spectacular with these amazing headdresses.
Thank you.
And I'm just so blown away at the amount of effort that must go into planning those.
Yeah.
Like how long does this prep process take you?
So what happens
It's not
is,
just food. It's like themed food,
decoration,
themed decor.
We have a party game and a themed prize every time.
My mind was blown.
So we started this originally because my partner Jess has been in the past disabled. That is suddenly changing that's a story for another day, but it's a great thing. But she primarily was housebound, and so we came up with this idea to throw these really cool tea parties up in our like mountain chateau.
Yeah, bring the fun to her.
Yeah, so that people would come and they would visit her and they would have a good time, and that was the original intention. There's a theme that we're going to talk about in our book today that was really relates to these sort of tea parties is that sort of miscommunication of what's important to you and what's important to one of your partners, and like their life view. Sometimes they don't always match up, because during one of these tea parties, I think it was like the second tea party I threw, I knew that I had to make scones, and I just knew.
And you need a lot of them.
You need a ton of them.
Parties.
And I know that I'm a really good baker, so I was just like, I can whip up a scone in an hour and a half, and that's it. So no problem. Oh, I remember it was the night of the Mike Tyson fight.
What a strange hallmark to remember. I do actually know the one you're talking about, though. Yeah, the paid fight.
It was the night of the Mike Tyson
match.
fight, and I was my entire D&D group decided to not do D&D because they wanted to watch the Mike Tyson fight.
What a curious overlap of interest.
I know. So I ended up being late for baking that evening because I had been watching the Mike Tyson fight, which was really disappointing. That's a whole other story.
All I'm hearing is Mike Tyson almost ruined your tea party.
He did.
Clip that for the cold
Mike
open.
Tyson.
Thanks, Mike Tyson. Ruined my tea party.
You made me get into a fight with my partner about scones.
Typical Tyson.
We'll have to blur those out.
Yeah.
So I got back and I was, my partner had shown up the night before. Patrick was, he was there. And I was trying to tell him, I got to go make scones. I got to finish making cookies. I got to finish decorating things. And he was like, no, I'll just go buy you scones. Like, it's okay. And like, you don't need to do this. Go to bed. Don't sit up making cookies until 2 a.m. And I was just like,
bro, missing the point.
And I finally was like, okay. And then I woke up at 6 a.m. and I just made scones before he could get up. so that this wouldn't be like a fight. Patrick and I don't particularly fight. Just every now and then, like once a year, we get into something like this, right? At some point, also, I ended up crying, and he was very like, "Why are you doing this? You know, I don't understand why you're putting so much effort into these tea parties."
If they're upsetting you this much.
Right, if they're upsetting you this much, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And honestly, to me, it's also just my whole education is in event production, plays, movies, etc. I am super high stress right before an event, feel fantastic afterward because you did it.
Sure.
And I can't describe that feeling to anyone who doesn't just get off on that.
Yeah.
Right? To the person who doesn't want to be stressed at all, what it looks like I do looks insane. And it was just that was the thing. You know, we ended up having a good conversation about it, but he really was like, seeing you so stressed, all I want to do is make it stop. Right. And I was like,
but the only suggestion he had for how to make it stop is how he would make it stop if he was that stressed, which was to just not do it,
not to volunteer, not to do it, not to put yourself in that position.
Right. But for you, that's a non-option.
That's not an option.
This is the thing you want to do. And the way you needed help in that moment was support in doing the thing that was important to you, not trying to be convinced that it shouldn't be important to you anymore.
What I need is a yes and.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Oh, I see. We need to make scones and cookies and such and such before tomorrow.
Great. Let me measure out the ingredients.
Yeah, let me put out the butter for you.
I'll make sure the oven's preheated. Like you needed someone to lean in.
Yes.
Not say.
Not tell me to stop
valuing these things about the party. Yeah. If you make your party less awesome, then you'll obviously be less stressed.
Right. Exactly. And see, and that's the thing that drives me crazy is because every time once I finish a project, everyone is like, "That was amazing. I can't believe you did that."
Me included.
Thank you. And it's like, okay, right. But all of that has to come with the crazy making cookies and scones at 2 a.m., right? Yeah. I try not to, but that's just sometimes the way it goes. So this past tea party was only a 2-cry tea party, which was pretty darn good.
That's a good ratio.
We've gone down from, I think, 5 to 2. So I'm improving.
I feel like I'm glad you told that story for this podcast because I do think it leads into the themes that we see a lot in the relationship between these two characters on how easy it is to make a mistake that hurts your partner if you don't have a shared understanding of what the expectations
of
are.
Like what it is that they need from you.
Right. Like being able to put yourself in your partner's shoes and having like true empathy for the situation that they are in instead of looking at their circumstances through your own lens and saying, well, this is how I would reduce my stress load if I were in this situation, rather than going, how can I reduce their threshold of stress because of the circumstances that they are in and what they want to get done. All right. Shall we talk about a book?
Yeah, let's talk about a book.
Let's talk about a book.
Megan, what is our book today?
I'm so glad you asked, Emi. I've been waiting for you to ask. So we are doing The Lady and the Orc. This is book 1 of the Orc Sworn series. Yeah. And I have fantastic news. There are a lot of these books if you get into it.
She just came out with it's like 9 or 10.
I think she's on 9. The most recent one is The Artist and the Orc. That's the one that I've read, which I really enjoyed so much. She's also got a couple of offshoot books.
Yeah, some little novellas.
Some little novellas that have some background characters that get a little bit more development. I feel like she's got a Christmas one.
She does. It's cute.
That makes me giggle every time. That always makes me giggle.
I think it's like Jingled by the Orc or something
Jingled
like that.
Jingled by the Orc. Okay, I am now really excited for us to do a whole month of Christmas stories.
Specifically like the Christmas side stories for everything.
I'm going to be honest. When we were at your garden party, we were talking about the podcast and someone asked if there were any Jewish themed books. Yes. And we found one on the internet.
Yeah.
There's a book about a woman that makes a golem. And so we're definitely going to do like 3 Christmas books and then the golem, and then the Jewish golem book. So that'll look forward to that. Good. It's in a few months. Give it, stick with us until then. The author for this is Finley Fenn. Finley, I don't know you, but I love you. Thank you for giving these books as a gift to the world. This one came out in 2021.
Okay.
And it is longer than you think it is. It was almost 400 pages. It's 388 on the page count.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of a meatier read, but boy, howdy, is it worth it.
We both thought it was shorter on the reread, and we both were like,
there's so much smut in it. Yeah. I'm used to books that are really short being that way because there's no plot.
Yeah, no, but she manages all the smut and all the plot in this one together.
Exactly. And in terms of the vibe, this is really a classic fantasy. And like Lords and Ladies, kingdoms, castles. And I do have to pause because I had a realization as I was writing the write-up for this novel.
Okay.
We have so far only done monster lover romances.
Well, yeah, when we
didn't
started this,
warn our audience.
Yeah.
We said we're going to do romance novel
novels.
reviews, and then we proceeded to give you a lot of very colorful penises.
Minotaurs,
Mothmen.
mermen.
So here's the thing. That just happens to be how our tastes run. However, we are very open to book recommendations from our listeners.
Yes, please get in the
fact,
comments.
we need help.
We do need help.
This is a call for help.
Yeah, we have read a bunch of the books that we already knew were fantastic, and we're only at the moment we're only doing book 1 of a lot of these series, even though there is multiples.
We
of
did
these
do
that we
Sweet
love.
Berries. So
Oh, that's true. Excuse me. We've done 1 number 2. At first, we were like, oh, we're gonna maybe do Bridgerton. Oh, maybe we'll do Outlander, and we've gotten to any of that.
we haven't gotten to them yet.
There's not been a normal penis yet.
Not a flesh-colored peen among them. So we need your help to recommend to us actually really incredible, like normal setting romance novels, so that you guide us. Please help us help you. If you want a non-monster romance, you're gonna have to tell us what's good, because we haven't read any of them.
Because otherwise, we're just going to keep doing monsters. But although if you want us to just keep doing monsters, keep
Say
putting
that
monster
too.
recommendations in
We're
the
fine
comments.
either way.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't get through episode 5 without acknowledging that there has not been a human penis yet.
That's true.
Okay.
I mean, today's, though, are the most normal, I think, of the penises we're going to see.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, and I know you have strong opinions about that, but should orcs count as monster romance? They are very human in a lot of ways. She does go through some effort, obviously, to explain how orc society and orc physiology, et cetera, is different from humans. But they are very near human, more than, say, the mermaid was, or the Mothman was.
I mean, okay, so I know.
Borderline.
I think in our Kraken episode, I think I said it was a cop-out to have a normal penis.
Yeah, you were real judgy.
I was real judgy.
I love it when you're judgy.
I did say it was a bit of a cop-out when you say you put something up as a Kraken, and then you end up with, okay, so excuse me, we've had one flesh colored.
One scene in one book.
In one scene in one book.
a couple scenes in it.
Whereas orcs are primarily normal shaped, technically.
They're just a fun color.
muscular. They're green or blue or gray.
They have tusks.
They got tusks, but
Did this read as cop out to you in the same way?
no, I don't make this one a cop out because number one, I think she puts so much effort into the stuff surrounding it, like. The orcs have their own culture. They have their own sex culture.
I'm
they
such
also
a sucker for world building, and it's
just
good
such a
in
good
this
one on
book.
the Orc Mountain.
A+.
You Cambric Creek, I'm Orc Mountain.
I don't blame you.
But yeah, she just puts so much other stuff around it that I think that it does become so fantastical and different enough that I just can't put this in the same column as Cop Out. Especially because we're talking, there's like some really good pheromone play in this book, and there's also we go back to sort of the same thing with Morning Glory Milking Farm, where we're talking about
Fluids.
Pints.
Oh yeah,
of
we'll
fluids.
get to the triggers.
Yeah.
and fluids is one of them.
Fluids is like
spoiler.
It's like like number 1 or 2 has got to be.
Yeah.
But yeah,
for sure.
I just, even though orcs still are human shaped, I just think
felt more fantastical to you.
It's fantastic enough that this one slides past.
That
my
could also
cop-out
be
sense.
because it is a high fantasy, medieval fantasy setting. It's not a modern
People are
day
riding
setting.
horses. They're
And so it
fighting with swords.
Feels more fantastical because of that. Yeah, I agree. Also want to comment that, there's a big difference in some of the novels we've read. They're more like, I'm calling them kitchen sink settings. So, Cambric Creek, you could have a book with a different cryptid every book, which she is clearly going to do. Same for the Stalked by the Kraken Love Bathhouse series. I think we're going to get different cryptids.
Yeah, for each book.
For each book in the series. This is more like Whispers in the Deep. That was mermaids every time. It's mermaids all the way down. Similar with these books, it's just going to be orcs.
Yeah,
there is no other fantasy
orcs all the way up
creature.
the mountain instead of mermaids all the way to the deep.
Yeah, orcs up, orcs down, orcs left, orcs to the right. Which is great. It's just good to know going in. It's always going to be an orc and a female human pairing.
Yeah, and we've read a couple of books I think this time that were like they were kind of just regular romances, but skinned with a cryptid in it, right? It was like, oh, this is just a lady going on fun ice cream dates with her science boyfriend, and he just happens to be a moth,
You
right?
can say that about any monster romance on some level.
Sure. There's a little bit of the, oh, and also he's a this. But I think this one actually does depart from that so much that there's no way that this is happening unless he is an orc in a mountain.
It is plot relevant that he's an orc, because as we said, she has enough page count to devote to a pretty invested plot.
Very
plot I got
good
invested
world
in.
building and
I thought so too.
storytelling.
Yeah, I agree with all that. So this is an enemies to lovers book, and a hallmark of enemies to lovers, I think, can be frustration at the amount of miscommunication that is necessary, especially in the early parts of the book.
Right, to make it work.
Because they have to not get along and until they build up to that flip where they are able to smooth those lines of communication out. And this book is no exception. And even for me, I think some of the early like miscommunications, yelling at each other got a little bit strained for me.
Yeah, there's
but
a couple times where
it was worth it.
They tread the same ground a couple of times, and it's like, wait, we already fought about this. Are we fighting about this again? But yeah, no, I do. She does bring up some fairly valid points when she's upset.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So doing just a couple content tags, and I want to thank this author. She puts content warnings at the beginning of the book, and I have a lot of respect for authors that do that on behalf of their audiences.
Especially if you know you're going to have triggering stuff in it.
Yes, which this book definitely has. So she says at the beginning of her list, spoiler warning. I don't actually consider these spoilers unless you like going into a book so cold that you haven't even really read the back of the book.
I'm one of those people.
All right, well, cover your ears, Emmy. So I'm going to read her. I'm going to paraphrase her list of trigger warnings, and then I have a couple others that I want to add. So high conflict, high angst, high steam, weapons and violence. This is big. Discussion of pregnancy and infertility and abortion. Those are themes that are very important to the story of the book. Past relationship trauma. There are some really intense scenes here that also kind of play around, if someone fully consenting here or not. Are you capable of consenting, in the situation that you're in? And then strong language, bringing it home with some
is there also
words.
Tobacco use and alcohol in there?
No, they don't seem to drink. They're
True.
dry. They're Mormon orcs. They don't drink. So some things that I would add, obviously enemies to lovers, forced proximity, right? Which often I think goes with enemies to lovers. How do you have that
how else
turn
if you're how else do you become a lover of your enemy if you don't spend time with them?
If you aren't forced to spend time with someone that you hate. And then mating bond, which is interesting because that isn't always part of an enemies to lovers story.
That's true.
Don't be fooled. There are some mating bond stories where it's like we're both instantly in love and we're both kind of locked in because of the amount of enemies that is in this enemies to lovers journey.
Right.
That mating bond is there, but it doesn't feel like a mating bond I've seen in other romance.
There are books that have mating bonds where it's like we're mated and now we're going to be together for eternity, and that's not what they talk about in here.
Yeah, agreed. Fluids are definitely on the list. It really, really is. And then public sex and embarrassment around sort of being on display and having sex in public. If that squicks you out, don't read this book.
Yeah, in this book, like the exhibition it's part of the whole point that they're doing. Like exhibition is what orcs
do.
That's just their big thing about sex. And so if you love me, you're going to sleep with me in front of all of my cousin's brother's friends. And that's how you're going to show your
explanations for it, which we'll get into. But you do, if you're not comfortable with that kind of voyeurism in a story,
this will definitely just not be the series completely for you.
So I have to say, when I saw her list of trigger warnings, the very first thing that went in my mind was, a shopping list. I'm like, check. Excellent. Let's roll. Is that your reaction when you see trigger? You don't read. You do try not to read them.
Well, sometimes I'll read a little bit and then I'll flip back. Yeah. Be like, oh yeah, what did she say about this book? But no, I'll barely read the back. I'll look at the cover and go, well, this looks fun. At this point, I'm a jaded old biddy. There's hardly anything.
Bring it on.
There's hardly anything in literary stuff that could scare me off. I think aside from bad writing.
That's valid. Yeah. That's so relatable.
Yeah.
All right. Just to get, kind of wrap up our intro so that we can get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Rainbow rating. I'm giving it a 3.
Oh yeah. No, this is the highest rainbow rating we've had so far.
Yes. And the reason for that is all orcs are queer. All of them.
Yeah.
Either they're somewhere on the bisexual spectrum, pansexual, or they actively are gay and do not prefer, opposite sex relationships and relations. And we definitely get on-screen displays of this.
Complete
because there's so much
displays of this.
public sex
Yes.
happening in Orc Mountain.
Yeah. And there's just not that many women.
Right.
So
What else are you going to do?
Who else are you putting it in, Who else you doing the midnight tug train with? Your friends. When your ratio
Why were you reaching above your head? Never mind, you're really short. I know why.
Because they're orcs.
I'm deceased. I am deceased. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
when your ratio of orcopene to any availableness, is like 23 to 1.
I get it.
Right? Like you gotta do what you gotta do.
You do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
It's just part of their culture.
Yeah.
And so
There's no shame in this.
And there's no shame in it. And so I'm giving it a 3. However, I do want to point out it's a very male centric type of queerness. There are no female orcs in this universe.
Nope.
It doesn't exist. Anytime a human woman and a male orc get together and they reproduce, it is always a boy and it is an orc. That woman is never going to have a human child.
There's no
and it's never going to be a girl.
There's got to be a little tiny girl orc kind of thing. No.
And so that's an interesting plot decision that the author has made. It lowers the rainbow rating for me. Like you would think, if there's like active gay sex in the book,
this would have otherwise gotten us to a 4 or 5.
It might have gotten to a 4. I wouldn't ever give it a 5 unless it was a queer relationship that was central, that was the main characters.
Yeah.
But it would have gotten a higher rating if the book hadn't eliminated the possibility of female queerness completely from its premise. Yeah. So I had to chop that.
Now I'm gonna toss out a one thing, because again we've read all of them.
Yeah,
there's
we've read them.
One way later that she does at least put in that there are some queer female characters in the background.
In the background. Well, this book doesn't get credit for that.
But it doesn't get credit for that. So, but I think she's aware of it and she wants to put more of it in, but it's not there yet. Not in this book.
I will also say again, because we read ahead and we've read this entire series, all of the sort of main books are always a male-female pairing.
Yes.
But the side stories are male-male pairing.
So,
if you want more male queer books, go for the side stories as well. Okay. So that's our rainbow rating. Spice versus plot. So do you remember on our last episode with Stalked by the Kraken, where I was like, should I give it a 5? Maybe I don't want to I'll give it a 4.5.
You said we can't, if we give it a 5, this is where we're saying that the top is.
That it could never be hornier than this. Good news. This book's a 5.
This is undecidedly a 5. 5
wow.
hot, giant green chilies.
Big green chilies. This book is not for the faint of heart. It is hot and heavy, and it starts really early.
Starts fast.
And it does not taper
starts
off.
Hard. Doesn't stop until the book is over, and then you have to wipe yourself off.
It starts hard, and it does not finish too soon, if you know what I mean. But genuinely, despite the sheer amount of sex in this book, there is plenty of page count left over for character development, for plot development. This is kind of what I had wished that Stalked by the Kraken would have done. Give me another 100 pages and give me more of the
witch
world.
Stuff. Yeah.
Give me cool witch rituals.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So this book delivered for me on the world building like whoa. And I think that's why I'm so devoted to the series.
Yeah, she did such a good job of portraying what her world was, what her world has been, and where she wants it to go.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
This book does have a little bit of that book one energy where you have to spend a lot more page count on establishing.
How did we get here?
Right. How did we get here? What's the backstory? So it does have a bit of that. And then in the later books, she doesn't have to do all of that again.
Yeah, so it pays off. Her work here pays off dividends later on.
It does. But still, despite that, I do feel like Lady and the Orc, of all the books in the series, is in my top 3. Mm-hmm, so it's a really great first entry. Good book. For the record, I looked this book up on Goodreads. It gets a 3.7, which is criminal.
That is wild to me.
This is criminally underrated.
Did you look at any of the others? Were any of the others higher rated?
No, but you know what? I will.
Okay,
all
right. Because that would be my only thing is that I do think that the other books later on are just better. Not that this one is bad. It's just that she just sort of hits her stride.
It could be.
But
criminally underrated.
This one. gets my heart. There's parts that I remember. You know, anytime that there's a scene that sticks in your head, you know it's a good book.
And there are a few, which we're definitely going to talk about. But before we can do that, we have to give everybody a spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning. One of the great privileges we've had since launching Smut in Public has been meeting authors and fellow creators who share our love of spicy romance.
We find new book besties every day, and supporting their work helps us all build a community together.
Our new book bestie, Ari, runs the Spicy Romance Book Club. It's an online apparel brand with cozy fits, perfect to wear as you curl up with the next book on your TBR list.
The Spicy Romance Book Club is a small, female, POC-led business, and Smut in Public listeners can enjoy 15% off their entire store order with promo code SMUTINPUBLIC.
Find your next book bestie by wearing your love of spicy romance literally on your sleeve. Right, good girl?
Megan, you're making me blush. Save it for the episode.
Okay, fine. Visit thespicyromancebookclub.com and use promo code SMUTINPUBLIC for 15% off your entire order. See you at the bookstore. So, now that we're back from our spoiler break, enter our protagonist, Jewel. Although I will confess, I called her Jewel for a while. Then I saw a little side character whose name was Amy, but it was spelled in the French way where it ended in an E. And then I panicked and I went, is her name supposed to be Julie or Jewel?
Yeah, you would not know the way it was spelled if you only listened to the audiobook.
So you listen to the audiobook, they call her Jewel?
Yeah, it's Jewel, as in like the e-cigarette.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. I would have been like a gemstone.
Oh, from having listened to it, I would have assumed that it was spelled like the gemstone.
Yes, but it's spelled
not.
J-U-L-E.
It's spelled
Okay.
like the
Well, don't make the same mistake we did. It's Jewel.
Jewel.
Now you know.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll remember to call her Jewel and not mess up and call her Julie. Whatever. Lady Nor.
Right.
Lady Jewel Nor. And all is not well in the house of Nor.
No.
Okay. Jewel is married to Aston, and he is an abusive fuckwit.
Maybe his name was Aston because he's such an ass.
Love that. Love that for him. Love that for us. So he's physically abusive. He's emotionally abusive. He's incredibly neglectful of both her and their entire household. He basically married Jewel because her dad had money.
She had good money.
She's
and
a trust
good
fund
name.
kid, and he's been draining that trust fund ever since they got married, and he is spending it on wine, women, and whores, right? Fancy carriages.
and fighting orcs.
Trips to the Capitol,
Yeah.
right? And of course, he's also sort of funding a campaign to destroy all orcs. But he doesn't spend any of that money defending his own property from orcs.
Apparently, and every time he leaves, he literally takes like the food with him.
Yeah, he doesn't give a single shit about Jewel or anyone that Jewel cares about, right? And that is very clear from the opening chapters.
From paragraph 1.
Yeah, we get some exposition from Jewel because in the opening of the book, he's basically leaving for one of his business trips to the Capitol,
right?
Where she knows that he's going to go whore it up, right? And while she is begging him to not leave their property undefended, we get some exposition about what's going on in the world here. So the background that we get from Jewel is that orcs and humans are at war. It's been this way, for generations. And they have a stronghold, which is creatively named Orc Mountain, where all the orcs live. And they've been sending raiding parties out regularly, and they've basically hit all the surrounding towns.
Yeah.
And Nor Manor is kind of right in the path.
She's like, I think, you know how we have a nice house?
With a lot of food, and
in
people in it.
Are you not aware that orcs like both of those things?
Are we not getting no soldiers, no mercenaries are going to defend our property?
Yeah.
And he literally goes, why would they want you? You're barren anyway,
oh,
you
that
frigid bitch.
Oh, that.
He doesn't
like right
use, don't worry, he doesn't say she's a bitch, but he does basically say that to her.
There's a special for Finley Fenn where all the human men in this series are trash.
Garbage. It's no wonder the women pick the orcs.
Yeah,
the
the
men
women pick the
are
orcs
trash.
every time because every single man she writes is a garbage fire of a human being.
Genuinely, even the ones that are less terrible are still terrible.
Still bad.
They're still real bad.
Yeah.
So we love that. So anyway, he leaves things completely undefended. And sure enough, they get attacked by orcs and she gets kidnapped by orcs.
Because of course.
In the opening books. And this is absolutely gut-wrenchingly terrifying for her because everything that human society knows about orcs is that they are violent, brutish people who kidnap women and force them to carry these orc spawn against their will.
To like rip
and
them
then,
apart from the
right,
inside
and
when
then
they're born.
It's very gruesome the way that they talk
no,
about it. There's
she
a
has
lot of
some
strong
like
language.
legitimate fears.
Yes, her fear of this kidnapping is incredibly legitimate, and it's scary for her. Now, something that I thought was interesting was I was trying to do the math on what age is Jewel supposed to be. I really feel like she read as middle-aged in a way that I appreciated.
Yeah.
But I think my sense of middle age and what the actual middle ages think middle ages are different.
Right.
She is supposed to read as more seasoned. She's been married for 10 years and I did the math, she's supposed to be about 28 in the books.
Ooh.
But she read more as 35 to me.
That's that. If you had asked me what age is Jewel, I would have said like early 30s, mid 30s.
Early to mid 30s. And I think it's because there's such a big conversation for her character around her fertility and her feeling like she's dealing with an infertility issue.
Right.
That maybe just because of my modern perception.
You'd be like at 30s is when you start panicking.
I would feel like 30s is when women generally start to feel like, ooh, gosh, if this is a thing that's important to me, I need to start prioritizing it, which is a really terrible thing we make women feel, for the record.
Yes.
But it is, I did appreciate that she wasn't written as an ingenue, right? This is not an 18 or 19-year-old protagonist, which happens a lot.
Being told away by the orcs as a young woman. No, she is seasoned.
She's a seasoned, mature person.
She's got her shit together.
She's been taking care of a household for a decade.
Yeah.
She really knows her shit, and she's a very strong person. And she pushes back against, her captor quite a bit because she has that strength to her, which I thought was good writing.
Yeah,
I appreciated it.
She has a compelling character from the get-go.
Yeah, I'm gonna say big. We triggered it. We gave you the trigger warnings earlier, but really big trigger warnings around conversations around physical abuse, around conversations about her infertility.
Yeah,
there's really strong language around those things.
She has a very sad
than
life
in later books.
Yeah, she has a very sad life, and she's just very descriptive about it. So again, this is why it was I cried during this book for sure.
Yeah, I cried multiple times during this book. I had an infertility journey, which I don't really want to talk about necessarily today. I may talk about it at some point, but it was somewhat triggering for me to watch Jewel struggle with what her infertility situation was doing to her life and to her marriage.
Right, like the identity that it gave her of being an infertile,
it was really affecting her self-worth in a way that I related to. And so it's a serious topic, and you need to know that that's in the book if it's going to be upsetting for you.
Because if you're on that journey right now, maybe this isn't the book for you right now.
Give it a skip. Yeah, but please read it because it's so good. Okay, anyway, so Jewel is claimed by Grimmar.
Yeah.
He is the chief of Orc Mountain. He is from one of the clans, Clan Ashkai.
Clan Ashkai.
We'll talk about the clans a little bit more later, but there's some really cool world building. There's 5 clans. You get to learn all about them in this book.
Instead of different cryptids, she has different clans.
Different cultures, like different cultural flavors of orcs, which is going to create nice variety in future books, which I appreciated. And Grimmar is important because he is the first captain of Orc Mountain to unite all 5 clans together in living memory, which is a really big deal. He's kind of like an orc prince, basically. And Jewel understands the position she is in after her kidnapping pretty quickly. She is a war bride. Okay. She has been kidnapped because Grimmar wants to use her to increase his influence over the other orc clans to kind of solidify this leadership position that he has very recently gained. And he also wants to use her to show everyone really like how weak Lord Nor is, because he couldn't even defend his own household or knock up his own wife.
Oh yeah. No, the fact that he definitely chooses her on some level
strategically.
Because he's like, this will be so embarrassing for the man who has been funding against my orcs. If I steal his wife, if I knock his wife up, this will be such a blow to his manhood.
Right. He's completely right.
100%.
Not only his personal pride, but his reputation as well. And we're gonna have to bleep this. He wants to cook. Austin. He's cooking Austin. And I love that for him.
I mean, I hadn't even, you're right. I hadn't clocked that.
It's a cucking story.
It is a cucking story.
Yeah. It's the ultimate fuck you
two
to
thumbs
Lord
on the
Nor,
cucking here.
which no one deserves it in this book more than Lord Nor, for sure. So Jewel, of course, is convinced that she's barren because it has to be her fault.
Right, because she does say that her husband does have illegitimate children.
He does. So he's been able to have children with not her. So her obvious assumption and his obvious assumption is that this is her fault.
She's got the problem.
But orcs have incredible senses of smell and hearing, and they know that she is capable of carrying children. That she smells fertile.
Right.
Is that sexy?
He's like, check this one, and they're like, ripe.
Yeah. I liked this story premise though, because to me, it's like very accurate to the setting that an heir can like make or break your inheritance.
Yeah,
sons were incredibly important.
He's like, I'm the captain now, and the captain has got to have kids.
Captain's got to have kids. Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that Aston Nor has not been able to produce an heir is a blight, that is driving him to even worse behavior than he necessarily would have had already. So Jewel is baby crazy. She would really love to have a child, and Grimar does a lot of dirty talk about knocking her up, and it works.
Oh man.
It worked for me. It worked for Jewel. It's real spicy. And again, serious warning, if you don't think pregnancy talk is sexy, if you don't find breeding kinks sexy, there are going to be some icks for you. Yeah. But if you are into that, lean in, baby.
Right in there. Right. So as a person who has never personally really wanted to have children, there was a short moment where I was like, and then I kind of was like, you know what? I think I'm just more suited to be an auntie.
Sure.
And so there's that bit of the interesting. Why does Emi read all these breeding books?
I don't know what it is biologically, but here's the thing: it's a fantasy. There's a big difference between enjoying something as an idea
and not having it want to apply to me.
Those two things do not go together.
Yeah.
And so I think it's totally fine to be into breeding kinks and think that doing that like pregnancy hot talk is sexy, and still understand that kids are not the right choice for you in your life.
And it was reading this as a person who does not want children. It was still hot. I was like, oh, Grimar.
So hot.
Maybe I do want a small orc baby. You've confused me, just like you've confused Jewel.
Well, and the pheromones.
Of course,
with the addled being a little bit addled.
Apparently, he smells fantastic. I mean, that's my weakness. A man who smells fantastic.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Amen. Yes, guys. Get on the train.
Get on the train.
Find a way to smell good.
Yeah.
Because that is instantly going to give you 2 points of hotness.
Yep.
For sure.
one extra point in your charisma slot, automatically smell good. Yeah.
And it's funny. She talks about the pheromones and how it lures in women. And when you smell it, it kind of addles your senses a little bit. She uses that trope in this first book more than she necessarily uses it later.
She sort of tapers it off, yeah.
And I agree with that, because sometimes the way she writes it does make it feel like dubious consent.
Yeah, and I do think that this is part of maybe the orc history, because in this world they sort of say the only way that we can get women
is because we smell good.
It's because we smell good and we have, giant schlongs kind of a thing. And there's this thing where women say, oh, I was bewitched by orcs and I had their babies and now I'm back and I'm fine. And the orcs are like, there's no magic, right? The best we can do is to smell good and kind of maybe be nice or something, because how else are we getting women?
I appreciate that having giant dicks is an evolutionary advantage for these orcs.
Yeah, that's probably true.
There's evolutionary pressure on penis size in this universe.
And so she does back off of that a little bit, because she's trying to say in this new world of orcs, they want consent.
Yeah.
And so she backs off on the pheromones. She's not like roofying, her female interest.
Right. It's kind of on that spectrum sometimes between you just magically smell nice and you're getting magically roofied.
Yes. She walks the line of fair balance. And she doesn't think she just does eventually sort of go, they just smell really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So another thing to mention, especially off the heels of the like 4 or 5 chapter long sex scene that we get really early in the
Yeah.
book, is the forced exhibitionism issue.
Yes.
This actually triggered my secondhand embarrassment a little bit too much. There's a scene where Jewel gets dragged by Grimmar out right after they've had sex, and he kind of parades her around a room full of orcs to
Yeah.
show off the fact that they just fucked. And that cycle happens multiple times in the book, where in private, Grimmar is very enticing.
I
He's
love you. I
loving,
want your body.
right?
Yes.
He's saying all the right things, but then in public, he's doing things that for her are very embarrassing and very upsetting and
Yeah.
are frankly verbally and emotionally abusive.
Yeah.
And that lack of communication and like inability to get a common cultural understanding of what's important to each other is really upsetting occasionally
Yeah.
when you're reading the book.
It's sort of like if you had a loving, tender moment with your partner, and then like you guys went out to dinner afterwards with your friends, and he's just like
Bragging
he's
about
like,
all the
I
sex you
just
just
raw
had."
dogged her, like crazy in the closet, and you wouldn't believe the noise she made.
You'd
right?
be like, well, I have the ick now.
Right.
Bye.
Exactly. And it is sort of like that. You were real nice 5 minutes ago, and then as soon as you got around your buds, you got gross.
Exactly. It definitely felt like that of like, it's not enough for you to be like this when it's just us. You have to treat me with that level of respect in front of your friends
Everywhere.
too.
Yes.
It's not okay.
Yeah,
You know? And so, consent is key.
yeah.
Right?
And
In that kind of stuff.
yes, consent is key for that. Like, it's fine if your friends, you've got the kind of friends where you say, hey, I rock dogged her in the closet, and they're all like, applause, applause, applause.
Your wife or partner has to have consented
She
to that.
Yeah, she needs to
before
have
you
been
go
like,
do it.
it'll be okay if you tell like Jim and Bob or whatever what we've been up to, because you've had a
Correct.
conversation about it
P.S.
beforehand.
This also goes for nudes. Do not
Yes.
show people nudes.
Oh man,
that you have received.
yeah, if you get those nudes,
Unless they have said it's okay to share those pictures.
yes, yes, exactly.
It's
like
the same vibe. It's the same ick. So yeah, if you don't find it, like if exhibitionism is too much for you, it can be. This could be upsetting.
it's a lot in this book.
It is a lot.
You gotta
There is
be.
a funny plot reason for the record on what Grimmar eventually explains on
Yeah,
why.
because she's like, what's up with all of this exhibitionism?
Correct.
Why do you want to show your friends my dripping pussy? Right?
Yes,
What
why?
is
She
with
does. She's
that?
like, why is this a thing?
Yeah.
And he says, we have incredibly strong senses of smell and hearing. Do you think they don't already know
Yeah.
every single thing that we did? What's the difference if they can also see it? It's irrelevant.
Right.
Which is actually a cool plot reason that their culture is like this.
He's like, look, he can, Balder can smell us, right? Having sex. He's standing outside the door right now.
Yeah,
He can
he
also
knows.
just, he can hear it real good. So what's the difference between these two things?
Yes, and that's a cultural difference that it
Yeah.
takes a really long time
And
for
it
him
also-
to successfully
To
explain,
explain it
and
to
for
her,
her to kind of understand.
And to them, it's also like an honor thing, right? Where they go, me showing that my mate loves me and appreciates me and wants to do these things to me gives me a status over, say, the orcs back in the day, where they would just force their partners, or they would, sort of trick them into it and hide them in holes, right? The fact that you are here and
it's
you
a
want
celebration of
yes,
our
it's a
love.
celebration of us being consensually together.
Yeah.
And that once it's sort of reframed in that way, you're like, oh, okay, all right, yeah,
I get
sure.
it,
Yeah,
but it
we're
would have
on-
been nice
we're
if
on
you
board.
told me,
Yeah, if you could have maybe communicated this
that
first.
communication thing, right? So they're hot and heavy. Eventually, with the whole kidnapping, as Jewel is moving around Orc Mountain and starting to understand and learn about her new home, Grimmar and Jewel really struggle to get on the same page. He's trying to be soft with her in private, but then he has to really be hard and kind of commanding and the boss to keep the other orcs in line in public. And this is not jibing. So Jewel spends a lot of the early book formulating a revenge plan,
She
right?
talks about revenge a lot. I'd forgotten how much she's like every other page. She's like, I I will have my revenge.
I mean, that's what I would do too.
Yeah.
I would do exactly what she did, which is I'm going to pretend like I'm fine.
That we're going
and
along.
that everything is going great. And then I'm going to fucking kill this guy the second I
Wait
can.
until I have that moment.
Right. It's like, I'm going to get a kitchen knife. I'm going to convince him I'm making him a delicious fish. And then I'm going to stab him in the neck. I would have done the same.
No,
So,
but I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing that once you've been kidnapped is to
but
plan
it's
the
kind
revenge.
of like plotting revenge by day, experiencing Stockholm syndrome by night, right? That just is what it is.
Yeah.
So she's meeting other orcs, Balder, you mentioned, and she's seeing the treatment that some other orcs are giving to her and that it's pretty kind and very normal.
And a lot
for
of them
her.
are scared of her.
Oh, they're way
like-
more
they're
scared
like,
of her
a human
than
woman.
she thought. Right. And she kind of realizes that, women have power over orcs in public.
Yeah.
Because if a woman goes to a human man and says, that orc attacked me, that orc kidnapped me, that orc essayed me, she will be instantly believed.
Yeah.
Right? There is not going to be a question. And so she kind of starts to understand that the dynamic here is not what she always thought the dynamic was, and that the orcs are terrified of humans in some ways.
And they have to convince the women at some point to help them make more orcs.
Yes, they
right?
desperately need women in their lives or their species will not continue.
Yeah.
And so the stakes for the orcs are pretty high here. And she starts to understand that the orcs are providing for each other. They're living together in community. She even ends up meeting orcs. So for the record, most of the orcs that we meet look ugly.
Yeah.
And the way that that's described is that they're all hideously battle scarred.
Yeah, they're scarred up.
Right?
Yeah.
Their bodies
Their
and their
ears have been all messed
faces
up.
look all
Yeah.
messed up, Mike Tyson style. I
They've
don't know.
been Mike Tyson.
Right.
Yeah.
But then she meets some orcs that live really down deep in the mountain. And she describes them as almost looking elven.
Yeah. She's like, whoa, wait a second. I mean, I know you guys are descended from elves, but like, I've never
Whoa.
seen that actually.
And she had sort of assumed that the reason they looked so hideous was because they were inherently and naturally really violent and they were like fighting all the time. So they're like rabid dogs. That is not the case at all.
No.
These orcs have names like John and Tristan, and they're
John
reading
and
books.
Tristan,
She's like,
yeah.
oh God, you can read? I
Yeah.
had no idea.
She at some point says, I didn't know you could count.
Yeah, it's so racist.
Yes.
She's so orc racist. But she's being confronted. Her assumptions are being confronted. And she's starting to understand that Grimmar's whole goal here is to build a better future for his people.
Yeah.
Right? She starts to learn about some of the family dynamics that these orcs have. And that, she meets an orc that says, my mother loved me. I loved my mother. She was a human woman just like you. And it was humans that tore us apart and didn't let us have the family that we wanted to have. Humans killed my mother, not orcs. And that really gets into her head.
Yeah,
and
she's like, none of this is what's been represented to me in my life.
She'd never heard stories like that before. She'd never heard real stories about orcs. She'd never met an orc, so she had been operating completely on assumptions and propaganda.
Yeah, which is makes sense from her point of view as a lady who in her
Of course.
education. Yeah, but
It
she
does.
finally gets the moment to break free and learn.
Yeah.
She gets to experience.
And I think even more, I misstated it to say that this was pure propaganda, because the truth is there are orcs like that. Grimmar's dad is like that, is the type of orc who kidnapped a woman, abused her, kept her chained at his feet, subservient to him, etc. We'll talk about it more. But not all orcs are like that. And so I think what she really realizes more than anything is that orcs have good and bad just like people do.
Just like
right?
people.
Of course, there are examples of both. And how could she have not thought there were also examples of orcs that are good people?
Right.
And she starts to think maybe Grimmar could be one of them, right? That because really what Grimmar wants is for his people not to go extinct. Right? He knows he needs to find some way to sue for peace with humans, or orcs are not going to make it.
Yeah.
And that's looking to the future and trying to plan for a future that that Jewel can really resonate, because she's also a very future thinking person. She's trying to think about the best for other people in her home and she would like to plan for the best for the future of a child that she hopes to someday have. And so that's something very relatable that starts to turn their relationship, I think.
Yeah, she talks a lot about seeing that Grimar is a good lord.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that was missing in her husband.
Right. Her husband was a terrible lord, because I think for her, it would have been one thing if he was abusing her.
Right.
She probably would have gotten
She'd
over
been like,
that.
it's me, but you treat the people
But,
well.
but he
All right.
also mistreated his household. He neglected them. He neglected the lands that he was supposed to be in charge of. He was a bad leader.
Yeah.
And a bad person.
And that to her is way more inexcusable.
Way more. And she's still like, maybe Grimar is a bad person, but he is a good leader.
Yeah.
And that starts to soften her heart
Yeah.
a little bit towards him. So, Emi, I know you wanted to talk about a really memorable sex scene that they have. And again, it is an upsetting scene.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed reading it. And it's the one where she kind of goes cold during one of their sexual encounters. Do you remember the scene I'm talking about?
She ends up having like a pretty rough day kind of a thing where she's sort of mistreated. And then he's like, they had previously the night before like a really very good like connection almost.
Yeah.
And then she had a terrible day. And then he was like, okay, let's do the sex again exactly like we did yesterday. And she was sort of like,
this isn't the day for that, bro.
Yeah.
You know, he's done something terrible in public.
Yeah.
That she's like, fuck off.
yeah, he humiliates her in public, and then he's like, okay, now make love to me the same way you did yesterday. And she's like, okay, your best you're getting is automaton sex, okay?
Yeah.
Where I
You're
go
getting, yes,
somewhere else
sir.
in my head.
No, sir. I understand,
Yeah.
sir. Sex.
And that was the moment I think I was literally physically grimacing. I want to say through like almost like the middle.
Yeah.
It's not the whole middle of the book, but through the huge portion. And I was just like, oh God, because it felt like a really realistic reaction to being in an abusive situation.
Yes.
Where you go somewhere else. And the moment that you find out that there's nothing that you can do that's good enough, right?
You just shut down.
You just shut down and you just go, of course, sir. And I think one of the line that she keeps saying is, I will seek to improve.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just that throwaway line. He's like, stop lying to me. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry that you think I'm lying. I will seek to improve.
And he can tell.
Yeah.
You know, like he doesn't immediately notice, but definitely afterwards, he goes, that didn't feel.
He's like,
that didn't feel right.
Yeah,
did it?
You weren't as excited as you were the other time. Like, what's wrong? And she's just sort of like,
So there's a quote that I
Yeah.
even wrote down because it's
so good.
branded on me, which was, once you shackled me, nothing after was freely given. And that I was like, ooh,
that was one of those moments I read it and I think I put the book down and I was like, oh,
yeah.
oh.
I needed a minute. The scene that we're talking about, it's very dark, and in the aftermath of their, in the aftermath of the sex
Yes.
that Grimar takes from her,
Yeah.
before he kind of understands that this is not something she's volunteering to do, even though she's saying yes with her mouth.
Yeah,
her
she's
body
not
and
saying
her
yes with the
emotions
body.
are not saying yes. Her heart is not saying yes,
Mm-hmm.
which thank God he recognizes that. She threatens to kill. She basically says, if you knock me up, I'm killing the baby.
Yeah.
Which is really, really dark, incredibly upsetting. Grimar like frantically covers her mouth and is like begging her, please don't say that out loud.
Yeah.
Don't finish your sentence, because of course he realizes that half the orcs can hear their argument, and he's terrified of what might happen to her if his brothers hear her saying something like that.
See, now I read that scene in a different way.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it was too upsetting for him to hear.
I actually thought he was basically like, please don't let our potential child hear those. Like, don't let that kind of a sentiment ever come out of your mouth.
Says you're already pregnant.
Yeah, because he says you're already pregnant, and so the fact of just like,
he's like, I don't want you to say it when the baby might remember it. Oh
right,
my
or
God,
just
I'm gonna
or
cry right
even,
now.
Yeah, even
sorry,
just
it was
like,
a really intense scene.
It was just to even put those thoughts in the air, right? That you would
It's
murder
so
him.
traumatic. And then there's another thing that I had to quote, which is, she says, I don't want my son to learn to treat me like this.
Oh, there's a scene where there's a tapestry.
I'm literally tearing up
yeah.
now just thinking about it.
Grimar keeps this tapestry in
Oh
his
my
room of
God.
a picture of orcs attacking a person. And she at first was like, she's like, obviously it's across from his bed. It must be the thing he looks at when he goes to sleep. Like what is this? What's he getting out of this? And the longer that she spends in Orc Mountain, she's just like, this is what they've been up to this point. And it's just like, she accepts, like, once she finds out that she is pregnant, she's like, if he has to grow up, he can't grow up like this.
I have to get away, not just for me,
but for him
I have
too.
to get away for him. But it has a really positive emotional payoff, even in that scene, because Grimar basically breaks through his understanding that he is in a cycle of abuse.
And he literally cries.
He absolutely cries.
I was just like, he like, she says this and she's expecting him to get angry and yell at him. And the next thing she knows is he's breaking down and crying.
Yes.
And he's like,
and he says, everything you're saying that's terrible about me is true. You're right. I grew up with the type of father that is exactly your worst expectations.
Yeah.
Kidnapper, assaulter, murderer. Everything that you say is bad about orcs is in me. It really, really is. But I don't want that anymore.
I want to be better.
I just don't know what to do, but I'm going to do everything I can to try.
Yeah, and he does tell her, like, I've treated you in these ways because it's how I saw my father treat his women, and I don't know any better.
I don't know any better.
Like, please tell me how to do
He doesn't
better.
even say, please tell me how to do better, which I am grateful for.
Right.
He says, I am going to
will
do better,
do better.
which is very different because he doesn't put it on her. He doesn't put it on her to explain, because he actually says, you've been telling me this whole time kind of what you needed. I'm listening now, and I'm gonna fucking fix it.
Yeah.
Which is so hot.
Oh, man. A man taking responsibility.
Accountability for his terrible behavior. Don't threaten me with a bad time. So, okay, let's pull out of the depths. We've been like in the pit. This is really tough.
This is the darkest moment, I personally think.
Yes,
then it goes up from there.
It goes up from there. So Jewel definitely, this is a big turning point for their relationship, and things start to get better and better with her and with her experience at Orc Mountain. She starts to let her guard down. She starts really embracing what life can be at Orc Mountain, and she finds happiness in her relationship and in her new life that she genuinely didn't think was possible in her life anymore. And they do fall in love. They fall in love pretty hard. I am going to stop there because there are more twists for their relationship in the last quarter of the book that for me are so good. I feel like I'd be doing you guys a disservice
to spoil it
if
at
I
all.
spoiled it for you at this point.
Yeah.
If you're in this far, please go read it.
Just read it. Oh my gosh. If any of the things that we said, if you don't want to read this book because of blah blah blah, if you weren't convinced by those,
push through,
please just read this.
Just push through. The last couple chapters are definitely like gut-wrenching, kind of heartbreaking, but I do think the payoff is worth it. I openly wept multiple times reading this book. So I agree with you. If you can push past some of the anxiety that you might feel early on or some of the ick that you get from some of their earlier stuff, I think the payoff is 100% worth it.
It has a great story to tell.
This book is 5 stars for me. This series is 5 stars for me. So that's my take on it.
The only reason this one doesn't get 5 stars for me is just because, I mean, it qualifies for 5 stars because I cried. But the only reason it doesn't get 5 stars for me is because just her other books later on
are so good.
They're just so, like, they are better. Like, this one is not bad. This is 4.5 for me.
Okay.
This was 4.5 for me.
That's
just
totally
because
fair.
Later on, she ends up writing some throuple books, which is what pulled me in.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And her throuple books are
There's
5 stars.
There's 3.
There's 3
throuple
of them.
books?
Yeah, she's got 3 throuple books. Yeah, and that was what pulled me. I accidentally read
I need
this.
to read them again.
I read this series out of order. I read number 9 first. Then I was like, this is great, and then had to go back and reread them all. So to me, her later ones are for sure 5 stars. This one just is 4.5. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that you read them out of order, because this is the type of series where you could just pick one up in the middle.
Sure.
And read it.
You get more out of it doing them in order, as I discovered.
I personally wouldn't. I think there's a build, and you get a lot of callbacks, and you see characters that were mains become side characters in other books. And I find that personally more satisfying. But if you have a low threshold for, mid books and you just want to cherry pick the most incredible ones based on, however you assess that, it would be okay.
Yeah.
To grab a few and read them.
I actually skipped around on all of these. I didn't even know there was an order, to be honest with you. And I think after maybe 3 or 4, I was like, I think there's an overarching story here that I'm missing, that these people seem to have a thing, like a background that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so I read them out of order, and then I read them in order, and then I read them again because this is the only series I think I've read 3 times out of the romance
This
novels.
was my third read
Yeah.
for book 1, and I deeply enjoyed it, and it's one that I will come back to again.
So good. Finley Fenn, you're like one of the few authors that I might literally
Thumbs
like.
up, Finley.
I would fangirl. I'd like.
I would fangirl real hard about Finley Fenn and their work if we were to ever get such a great opportunity. So thank you so much for joining us. Deep in the depths of Orc Mountain. Looking forward to our next book, which is going to be Ice Planet Barbarians.
Ice Planet Barbarians.
Ruby
yes.
Dixon.
Another. I have read all, and I want to say 47.
I checked, and there's 23 in the main series, but I think there are offshoot series that aren't counted in that.
That's true. That is true.
I think I've read 14 or 15 of them. We'll talk about it next week.
We'll talk about it next week.
We're really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Please join us.
And then also, in the
for it.
comments, please again,
Yes.
drop us books that you want us here to go over.
Basically tell us if you are absolutely happy for us to keep doing these monster boner books, or if you have any recommendations for actual human partnerships in any configuration. If you want a flesh colored peen, put that with your book recommendation, because we don't know what's good because we haven't read it.
Upvote the ones that you agree with, please. It's great.
Yeah,
and
willing.
We'll check all of our platforms who's doing
anywhere
what.
you want to let us know in the comments, in our DMs. We're listening. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to Smut in Public. And this has been Megan and Emi.
And we will read more Smut and report back.
Yes, ma'am. Or sir. Or orc.
Or orc.
Bye.